Hi, and welcome to a new installment of the Dallas Bar Association's Living Legends series. My name is Lisa George, and I'm Corporate Counsel at Salesforce and a proud member of the 2021 class of the Dallas Bar Association's We Lead. Today, I'm honored to be here with Hilda Galvan. Hilda is partner in charge at the Dallas office of Jones Day, where she's practiced for nearly 25 years. Hilda is a nationally recognized trial attorney, and she has focused her career on representing tech companies in intellectual property disputes. She received her bachelor's degree in electrical engineering at the University of Texas, El Paso, and her JD at the University of Texas School of Law in Austin, Texas. Hook 'em horns. In her spare time, Hilda is dedicated to giving back to the community in numerous ways, including as an advisory board member for SMU School of Engineering, a member of the Board of Trustees for the University of Texas Law School Foundation, and most recently as an honorary co-chair of the Dallas Bar Association's Equal Access to Justice campaign. Hilda, thank you so much for being here and speaking with me today. Tell us about your childhood. Did you always want to be an attorney when you were growing up?
So let me start by saying it's great to be here with you, Lisa. And I'll tell you a little bit about my childhood. And I'll start with saying no. I did not want to be a lawyer when I was a kiddo. Judges always tell you, answer my question first, and then you can get to the details of answering that. But I was born in El Paso, Texas, and raised there. I'm the middle child of three. And I was raised by two incredibly wonderful people, my mom and dad, but they didn't have the benefit of an education. So my mom was born in Mexico and raised there, and she had to drop out of school in 6th grade. My dad was born and raised in Texas, but he had to drop out of school in sophomore in high school. He was the eldest son, and he had to help his parents take care of the family financially. So they didn't have the benefit of an education, but they valued an education, and they taught us some incredible lessons. And one of them was, work hard, study hard, and you can do anything you want in life. And so from the very beginning, it was always about school for me, my brother, and my sister. We were very focused on, doing well in school. And I loved math and science. I was the nerd in the family, and I still am, is what my brother and sister say. But I loved math and science and wanted to do something with that. I didn't know what, because I didn't really have anyone around me that had a background in math and science that could tell me, here's your options. But I learned as I got a little bit older into high school that engineering could be an option. I was the first engineer, first college grad, and the first lawyer. So I think my parents, it's really funny, this is a side story. When I graduated as an engineer, my dad asked me if I could fix the television at that point in time. And I was like, no, I can explain to you how the television works, but I can't fix it. He was like, so I paid for school for 4 years and you still can't fix the television? I'm like, nope, sorry, Dad.
That's so funny. So you worked as an engineer for a few years, and then how did you end up deciding to go to law school?
So actually, when I was studying at UTEP, I had a part-time job working for a lawyer, and just wanted to make some extra money. So I worked first as a receptionist, and then I became his legal assistant, and would go into the courtroom with him. And he was a general practitioner, divorce cases, some criminal cases, a little bit of everything. But I just loved being in the courtroom, and I thought this is fun. It was like playing sports. I grew up playing basketball, and I loved always that competition and kind of the thrill of the big game, and that's how being in the courtroom felt. So I thought, I'm gonna go to law school, but I need to make some money. And so I graduated, moved to Dallas, and I was an engineer for 5 years. But a couple of years into it, I thought I'll do it 2 years and then I'll go. 2 became 5. And I got married at that time, and I was really concerned that I might not go to law school, and just because life happens, right? And I had a technician who worked for me who had told me at early in my career, he goes, the worst thing in life is to say I wish I had. Mm-hmm. So, if you want to go to law school, just go, right? And you'll have no regrets. And if it doesn't work out, you can always, go back to being an engineer. They can't take that away from you. So we had just built our home. We'd been in it for about a year, and I said to my husband, okay, I'm going to law school. And he was fully supportive. And so I went off to school in Austin, and he stayed here in Dallas working as an engineer. He was also an engineer. And did the law school thing.
So you guys had a long distance marriage for a couple of years?
Yep, we did. The best 3 years of our marriage. I say that jokingly. No, we've actually, I guess this year will be 35 years of marriage. So we've been married a while. So in any event, yeah, we did the commute for the 3 years, and it was it was difficult at times. It's probably what I was most challenging about being in law school was kind of the personal side, the being apart for that length of time. But it kind of all worked out, and so we're still together, happily married all these years later.
That's awesome. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you.
So you went to UT for law school. That's where I went as well. Great school, super competitive.
The difference between law school and engineering, right? So in law school, everyone studies really hard, but then you show up to the exam and everyone looks like they hadn't been studying because everybody looks really good. And it's just a different approach to school. Whereas at engineering school, we would all study and everyone looked horrible, and you showed up to your exam looking horrible because that was kind of, showed you'd been studying. So I was always it felt different. Law school felt different. Like everyone was very confident about their grades and how they were going to do the exam, and I had to get used to that different mindset, which was very different from engineering. So there was a big difference between engineering students and law school students, and that was probably the most challenging, is trying to understand and how to fit in that world was a challenge, and how to think like a lawyer and not like an engineer, right? There's a difference. Engineers have an answer. Lawyers make it up, so it's that difference, but that was probably the most challenging.
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about. I was a biochem major in undergrad and went to law school, and it was just a whole different way of thinking, a different way of studying. It definitely was a learning curve for me too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you could go back to law school and do something over again, what would you say that would be?
I would spend more time with the people in law school. One of the things that I have learned over time, and I always look back at the things that I would do over, and it's always the relationships. I was always so focused on getting through law school, doing well in law school, and getting to to my job, right, but the next step, that I sometimes didn't stop to just enjoy the moment. And that's what I would do different. I would stop and have spent more time with the people that I was in law school with and gotten to know them better, gotten to really enjoy law school at the personal level as opposed to the, just the educational level.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your early career. So what was your first job out of law school, and what type of law were you practicing at that time?
So I started as, of all things, an M&A lawyer. And it's when I went to law school, I had thought litigation. And then once I was in law school, everyone said, well, with your engineering degree, you should do, patent type work. And I hate being told what to do. And so I was like, nope, I'm not going to do litigation, and I'm not going to do patent. I'm going to do corporate law. And so I started as an M&A lawyer and did that for about a year, and then thought, no, this is not for me. And so I completely, switched gears and really stepped back and said, okay, what is it that I love, right? What do I love to do? And one of them is I love technology, and I really enjoy technology. I enjoy learning, the different types of technology, be it something in chemistry, be it, software, and so I have that background. So why am I not using it to my advantage? And at the time, probably still so, but more so back then, there were not many women with technical backgrounds, that were doing patent litigation or any type of patent work. So I thought, I'm not making the most of what I love and what distinguishes me from others, and a skill set that's unique. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go into the patent world, which involves a whole bunch of things. You could do the the technology transactions, you can do the writing of patents, and then you can do the litigation. So I tried all three of them and figured out that the writing of patents was not for me. I mean, I could, it was like being an engineer again, sit in my little office and be by myself. And the litigation is what I ended up loving the most and where I've ended up focusing my career.
So you ended up doing what everyone was telling you to do. You
yes.
so hard to
But I had to get there.
And
That's one of the things that, kind of a lesson that my dad taught me at a young age. And you have to work it out yourself, but is never letting others define you, right? And so everyone was saying that's what you ought to do, be a patent, lawyer. And I was like, nope, I'm going to figure it out on my own. And I always say that to people is, you may end up getting to that place that everyone thinks you should be at, but you got to figure it out on your own so that you feel good about, this is a choice I made. Because there are times that people will define you in a way that's not to your benefit. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. So.
And you found that out on your own, that you enjoyed doing that work instead of wondering, what if I would have done something else? Maybe I would have liked that better.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's it's back to that phrase that technician shared with me is, the worst thing in life is to say, I wish I had. Just do it, figure it out, and then you feel good about it. Whether it's the right choice or not, you've learned from making that choice.
Yeah, exactly. So throughout your career, who would you say has been the most influential person in helping you define your career, and what are two important things you learned from that person?
So it is Robert Turner. Robert Turner was a senior patent lawyer in town here in Dallas. He probably was the mentor to most of the senior, we were all young at one time, IP lawyers. He was just an amazing human being. He passed away a few years back. And he taught me so much. And I would say the two things that he taught me is always have respect for others, including that, difficult opposing counsel. It's just, if you treat everyone with respect, you'll feel better about what you're doing and you'll accomplish more. So that was number one. And then the other one was perspective. Keep perspective on everything, everything that you do, including, sometimes we would be in a case and some bad facts would come up. And I'm like, I'd run like, oh my God, Robert, this is what's happened. And he would always say, okay, let's just think about it. And even the bad facts, put them in perspective, can be not so bad, right? And so he taught me those two things, which applied not only to being a lawyer, but to being a person, right? Treat everyone with respect and keep perspective in life.
That's great. So how did you meet Robert? Was he someone that you worked with, or did you meet him through like a bar association, or? No,
I actually ended up working with him. So I first met him, I was at a different firm, and I met him through one of the Dallas Bar IP section, in fact. And I met him through that. And so when I was looking to focus my practice on patent litigation, I talked to a couple of firms, and Jones Day is where he was at. And so talked to him, and just, I thought I could not, find a better person to work with. And the firm had some great patent litigation that they were doing. And so I decided to make the move. But Robert was a big part of that decision.
That's great. And you touched upon this earlier about being one of the few women in this space. Was that intimidating for you, or how did you feel about that?
It didn't intimidate me, probably because when I was going through engineering school, that was usually the case. Yeah. I always share with folks a story. This was one of my first electronics classes, and usually, if not always, I was the only female in the class. And my electronics professor walked in, and he looked around the class, and then he looked at me, and he said to everyone, he goes, "Well, we know who's going to fail this class." Right? So dealing with those kinds of things, it's just, you just get used to it, right? And what you learn is, okay, well, I may fail every other class, but I'm going to get an A in my electronics 1 class, and it drives you in a different way, and you just have to learn from that, right? You got to have a thick skin sometimes, and just prove others wrong, right? And so that's what I did in my electronics class, and even at Jones Day, it's been a great firm to me, and it's treated me really, really well. But when I first started, I was the only female on our in the IP practice. And so we had one of our big meetings with all of the lawyers involved in these very high profile patent cases for a semiconductor company. And the senior partner walks in and he looks around, and his response was, "I did not think we were going to have any legal assistants in the room," looking at me, right? So it's that same type of thing. And what do? You can't get mad and take your ball and go home, right? You've worked so hard to get where you're at. So all you can do is say no, introduce yourself, say here I'm a new associate here, I have an engineering degree. Bet you don't, and he didn't, but I didn't actually say that. Just thought it, and just I will prove him wrong, right? And I did, in fact, I was very successful as a lawyer there, and then became a partner. And interestingly enough, as he was senior status and he was getting ready to retire, he wanted to kind of work on one more case, and he had to come to me and ask if he could work on one of my cases. And I just remember thinking, gosh, isn't this awesome, right? Years ago, he thought I was a legal assistant, and now he's asking me for work, And he ended up being a great sponsor of mine, but, I could have stopped, and instead I just, you take it, and you just prove people wrong.
Yeah, that must have been a great feeling.
Yeah, it was. It really was. I just remember thinking, oh, well.
Now you're asking me for help.
Yeah.
So you've been doing what you've been doing for a while now. How are you still learning and growing? For example, I saw in your LinkedIn profile you recently earned a certificate in artificial intelligence. That's amazing.
So I could have been a professional student. In fact, after I graduated from law school and I started working as a lawyer, my husband said, "Okay, that's it. Engineer, lawyer, you don't get a third degree. You're sticking with this one."
Like medical school.
That's it. But I've always been. I could learn, forever. It's just fun. I could read and learn new things, and there's different ways to do that. And right now, I would say I'm learning the most, not from doing something like that, although artificial intelligence is fascinating. I'm very involved in the community and in all kinds of different things. And in being involved in those different things gives me knowledge that I didn't have. And I'll give you an example. Just this morning, I was on a call. So I'm on a sub-council for the Dallas Regional Chamber. And it's the Police and Criminal Justice Reform is our council. And so I was on a call with a team, and we were talking about various law enforcement issues and bills that could be passed. And I'm just learning so much about how law enforcement works and the things that we could do to make it better, even as a business community, not necessarily as a lawyer. And so I've learned so much, about that. I'm involved with the Texas Women's Foundation, and we do a lot of research that really tells us what's happening to women economically and in leadership. And it's data driven, right? So I learned so much about that, things that I didn't realize have such an impact on a woman's life. Right now, the key issue with the pandemic, right, is the number of women it's basically taken them out of the workforce or significantly impacted their future leadership potential, and working to find ways to fix that and learning from the experts. And I love learning in any way, but that's kind of how I'm learning now, is how we can make this community better for everyone. And there's just so much to be done.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot to be done.
Yes,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And also the space that you're in, representing tech companies, technology is evolving, and what used to be cutting edge 5 years ago is no longer cutting edge today. So I'm sure keeping up with the technology companies and what they're doing is probably a big part of your job too.
Oh, it's funny. My partners and other lawyers will comment. They can always tell when I have a brand new case, because when I start on a new case, I'm really digging into the technology. And I think that's when I have the most fun, right? And they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're in such a great mood. You must have just gotten the case." So like, yeah, and it's because I love the technology. And what I studied in engineering, so I graduated in '85, is like not what is happening now. It has changed so much. When I graduated in '85, PCs were just starting, right? And so it's a fundamentally different world. So I get to learn with every case, because what you fight about is the cutting edge technology. And I get to learn, from sometimes from the engineers themselves, at the company or from our experts or our technical experts teaching us, really interesting technology, and then learning it so well that I can explain it to a jury, right? So I always think about that as like, okay, how would I explain this to my mom, right? So how she can understand how this software works, and in a way that she can feel like, okay, I'm a juror in this case, and I understand enough to go with, Hilda's client.
That must be the hardest part.
It is. It is taking this complex and simplifying it. What's really interesting to me is over the years, my fellow team members, who tend to be men, will be talking about a technical issue, and they're all like, yeah, like they all understand it. And I always ask the simple question, well, what about X? And nobody can answer it, which is one of the things that always makes me laugh. Is sometimes we pretend we know what we're talking about, and you have to really know what you're talking about to be able to explain it to a juror. And you have to be okay asking questions like, okay, I didn't understand that, so somebody explain it to me. And again, ironically, most of the time nobody could, so we'd have to go to our technical expert to explain it to us.
Yeah, I work with a lot of engineers. They're my internal clients too, so getting them to explain something to me in a way that I understand, it's tons of questions, tons of digging, so I get what you're talking about.
Yep, absolutely.
So you're busy, you're partner in charge at Jones Day. How do you manage your time, and how do you make sure your people you manage have the proper support?
So I'll start with the people that I manage. The easiest thing to do is just ask them how they need help, right? Because everyone needs it different. So the young, the baby lawyers, as I refer to them, the first, second years, they need help in a completely different way than one of my senior partners who may need guidance on a business development issue or something. So I just ask what they need, right? It's like, what can I do to help you be successful at whatever whatever their role may be, and people will always tell you, they're like, or it makes them think, and when they think about it, sometimes that's half the answer. They're like, oh wait, I really don't need your help on that because I can do X, right? So that's what I do to help my team, is ask them what I can do. And sometimes I can be helpful to them, and other times I'm just a sounding board, and that helps them as well. But for me, I focus on what's important to me at the moment, and if I can do that, then I can manage my time. Sometimes it's a particular case that I'm working on, and you're getting ready for a big hearing, so I'm focused on that. I manage my time to that. Other times it's some other aspect of my responsibilities at the firm, or what I'm involved in the community, and I just stay focused on what I'm passionate about, and that can change from day to day, right? It could be my case, it could be a client, it could be one of my lawyers, it could be one of my community organizations. So just focus on what's important at that given moment.
That makes sense. And I'm sure the people that work with you really appreciate you reaching out and asking how you can help them. I feel like that just having that question being asked means a lot, and makes them feel supported too.
Yeah. Well, I hope so.
Yeah. Have you struggled at all with giving away control? Obviously, like, you're busy as being a partner. You may not be able to get into the nitty-gritty of a given case. Have you found that you struggle with giving away control, or is that something that you're comfortable doing?
No, you do struggle with it, and you struggle with it at different phases, at stages, I should say, of your career. I remember going from being senior associate to being the partner, right? That's a different control. As a senior associate, I kind of ran things, and I had control in that way. As a partner, I had to let somebody else, run the show and be okay. I let the next senior associate, run the case and step away from that. So it's hard, but you have to remind yourself the importance of developing the next generation of lawyers, the next generation of leaders. I'm working on a case right now with a young partner in another office, and I don't always agree with the way he handles things, and I'm so tempted just to say, hey, let me do this, right? And I have to remind myself, and I talk to him about it, is, my job now is not only to get a great result for the client at the end of the day, but also to develop my next generation of partners to being, fantastic trial lawyers. And if I remind myself that, then I can let go. But sometimes it's hard.
Yeah,
right?
it's hard.
Lawyers are by nature, I think, a little bit control freaks.
Yeah, and you always think that your way is probably the best way, but to your point, there may be a variety of ways to get the result that you want. It's just hard to not see it done your way.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and I'll tell you, always I have an administrative partner that I work with very closely, and I always like somebody who in that role who thinks differently than I do.
Yes.
Because that way I was like, oh, here's what I'm thinking we should do, and then getting that pushback of, well, what about this? Did you think about that? And there are times I'm like, I hadn't thought about that. You're right. I should not do that. Right. So it's good to have different perspectives and then to listen to them. Right. And make a decision based on every possible factor that you could consider.
At the last company I worked for, the CEO that came in, like when I was still there, they hired a new CEO, and he came in and hired an entirely new C-suite. And all the people that he hired were just so different from him. And his perspective was like, I don't want more of me. I want people that have different perspectives and different ideas. And I think that's so true. You don't want to hire someone that is just going to be a yes man or a yes woman. You want someone that will challenge you and help you come up with better ideas.
Yep,
so,
exactly.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think this is an interesting question. Obviously, when we interview people or talk to people in doing these Living Legends series, we talk about all their accomplishments, but can you share a failure or a challenge that you experienced that you believe led to later success?
Yeah, so I had my son my last year of law school, so he basically started my career as a lawyer with me, and your first year as an associate can be some of your more challenging years, because you're just working incredible hours. And so my son was 5. He had started in school, and we had a parent-teacher conference that I could not make because I was out of town on business. And the teacher told my husband that our son was a little bit behind in school, in reading, and he just needed his parents to spend more time with him.
That must have been so hard.
Exactly, you can imagine, right? So I come home and my husband tells me, and that immediate guilt that comes with being a mom. And so I decided, you know what, I can't do this. I'm going to go in-house. And the company where I had been an engineer, I knew the general counsel for my days as being an engineer there. And she had talked to me in the past about joining the company, and I had said, no. So I decided, I need to do this. I need to go in-house, and so I did. I called her up, and I had a job opportunity there, and I started there. And I was there about 3 months, and my husband said to me, he goes, Hilda, you may be home from, every day, 8 to 4 you work and you're here. He goes, but you're miserable. And he says, and that's not good for you, and it's not good for us. So why don't you call Jones Day and see if they'll take you back? So I immediately called Jones Day and called Robert, my mentor, and said, can I come back? And he goes, absolutely. So within the month, I was back. Right? So I left the firm, I went in-house, and that was not the right choice for me. I missed what I did, but it allowed me to learn more about myself. And I came, back to Jones Day. My husband and I decided that he would retire as an engineer, and he stayed home with our son. And that allowed, me to really focus on my career, do what I loved. And my husband is the eldest of 9, so he's an incredible caretaker. He raised our son, and the two of them are amazingly close. Our son is very successful in his career and in life. And so I feel like I did the right thing. And if I hadn't done it and things hadn't worked out, I would have always wondered, I should have quit Jones Day back then, or private practice, and gone in-house. But I didn't have that to look back and regret, because I did it. And it was not the right choice for me, but I learned from that. And then it led us to making a better choice for us and for our family, and and I've had a successful career since then.
That's great. And just shout out to your husband for recognizing that you weren't happy in your role, because I'm sure you would have just put your head down and kept on working had he not just pointed out that, like, you're not happy, and I think you're happier back in the firm.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, there's a senior partner, now retired from a firm, Linda Addison. She was at Fulbright Jaworski and was her managing partner. And long ago, she had made the comment, somebody had asked her, what are the top 10 things that made you the most successful? And she would always say the number one thing that made her so successful in her career is she chose the right partner, someone who supported her in every decision that she made, and allowed her to put her career where she needed to put her career at any given time. And I do think making that choice of someone who supports you in that way, and helps you see you, as my husband did then, saying you're not happy, is really critical to being successful in your career and in life.
Yeah, for sure. And I also feel like, as a fellow mother and a female attorney, your career kind of goes through ebbs and flows, right? So depending on, like, the stage of life you're in, maybe you have a newborn, then maybe your career takes a little bit of a back burner. But then, as your children grow up, you can then focus on your career. So it's like, they talk about work-life balance, but it's almost like, you have just different phases in your career of what's the focus, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. When I started my career as a lawyer, my son was a newborn, so I was either working or with him, and that was it. I did very little, if anything, outside of that.
Yeah.
Certainly not my involvement in the community. And it wasn't until later in my career, where I had more time, that I could shift gears and get more engaged in the community. You just have to figure out what's right for you, and that's critical. And so often we try to do what everyone would expect us to do, right? And that's not what you should do. Do what's right for you, what's right for your family, and sometimes that balance is different. And all that matters is that it works for you.
Yeah, exactly. So you've had wild success in your career. If you could attribute your success to, like, one trait or skill that you have, what would you say that is?
I would say my ability to handle stress. It's, a lot of people, when things get stressful, it overwhelms them. It almost has the exact opposite effect on me. When things get really stressful, it's just like I go to my zone, right? And I focus, and I just get things done, and I'm much more calm, and just my ability to handle that. And I don't know that you can work on that. I just have always been that way, and it's my dad's the same way. Stress doesn't stress us. Stress is like, okay, time to get in the zone and get it done. So I would say that that's a skill that has been very, very helpful to my career, because as a lawyer, as you know, it can be stressful, really stressful at times, and you got to still get it done.
Yeah,
So.
I need to get some tips from you on that. I have a good poker face. I think it's really important for when you communicate with your clients, that even if you're freaking out on the inside, you have a calm, like, let's figure this out demeanor. But in my back of my head, I have all the stress spells going.
Well, I say this, I share this with others, is, sometimes it's just breathe, right? Because we tend to want to react, like, oh my gosh, and you want to react, and sometimes the reaction just aggravates the situation, makes it worse. And so if you just, like, breathe, and just stop and think about it, it'll come to you, right? And that's the biggest thing. And I recently had this conversation with my son. It's like, just, when things get stressful, just breathe, just, catch your breath. And it's amazing how that just calms you down, and you just, you get focused again, rather than just reacting, which is, human nature.
I bet it's that analytical engineering side of you that's like, there's a problem, there's going to be a solution, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, that may be it.
So let's talk about your life outside of work. I know you're busy with your job, but what are some of your passions outside of the workplace?
I would say right now it's finding ways to make our community better. I've been blessed with so much. When I think back and kind of where I started from, and how I was able to get here, And I look at youngsters, especially young women, right, and the struggles they're going through, and the disadvantages that they have sometimes. And then I'm talking about young women from low economic homes. There's so much to fix, and that's really my passion in some ways, is what can I do to make my community, which has been so great to me, a better place, and what can I do to be a mentor to young Latinas, right? That might not otherwise, see themselves being in my role.
Mm-hmm.
I not long ago had met a young lady who also from El Paso, similar background, and we were talking, and she's like, "Well, if you can do this, I can do it." I'm like, "Exactly,
Yeah.
right?" If people see someone that looks like them, that comes from that same background, be successful, then they feel like they can. And so a lot of it is, what can I do to help others believe in themselves and have an opportunity to succeed in the same way I have?
Yeah. I mean, representation matters so much. If you don't have those representations of someone that looks like you, that comes from your same background, doing great things, and you don't have that same feeling that I could do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's really big.
Yeah, no, it helps.
So talk a little bit about you being the honorary co-chair for the Equal Access to Justice campaign. Can you tell us a little bit about that program?
Oh, absolutely. So I was asked by Chrissy Castle, who's the president-elect of the Dallas Bar, who is also a fellow El Pasoan and UTEP grad, if I would serve in that role. And I said, absolutely. Equal Access for Justice and what DVAP is doing it makes a difference. It makes a difference in, again, the lives of those who are less fortunate, who don't otherwise have the resources to be able to take care of issues, legal issues that are important to them. So I'm thrilled to be a part of it. If I can do anything to advance the ball and help that organization gets the funds that it needs to do the great work that they're doing, I think it's an honor to have been asked, and we're giving it our best shot to raise as much as possible so that we can make a difference.
Awesome. Is there any place that anyone could go to learn some more information about the Equal Access to Justice?
The Dallas Bar website. Okay. You could do a Google for Equal Access for Justice. You can get on the DBA website, and it'll link you there.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Final question related to just being a lawyer in your career. If you could have any advice or give any advice to female attorneys like me, who may be in the middle of their career, wanting to keep that upward trajectory going and avoid career stagnation, what would you say?
I would say always be strategic in your career. Think about what the next role will be, and then don't let others define you,
Yes.
right? Think about that. It's like, okay, here's where I am now, and in 5 years, here's where I want to be. What do I need to do to get there? And if there's any naysayers, just block that out,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's not easy, but you just got to push forward. Just never quit, right? We are fortunate to be in these careers, and you don't want somebody to knock you out of it, right? So you just keep pushing forward. Don't quit, don't let others define you, and be strategic. One of the things that I would say, and I know that you're not this way, but maybe some of our younger female lawyers, is don't let yourself get into roles that aren't advancing your career. And it's little things. I so often see, we're in a big meeting and somebody needs to take notes, and inevitably it's the female lawyer that volunteers. And I will say, nope, youngest lawyer in the room takes the notes. And that may be a guy. Or if they're both, I'll say, nope, John, you're taking the notes this time. Don't put yourself in the roles that are traditional female roles. Yeah, people will think you're really helpful, but is that giving you the skill set that you need to be the trial lawyer or to be the lead lawyer on an M&A deal? Always be strategic in your career. Don't always be helpful in a way that isn't beneficial to your career advancement. It's important that we not get ourselves in these roles that don't necessarily help advance our careers.
I've heard that note-taking statistic before, and it's very interesting because I feel like that's something that I would be like, oh yeah, I can take the notes. And I think you're right, like 99% of the time it's a woman in the room that's taking the notes. Another thing I heard too is like, don't be the person with the candy jar on the desk.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll do little things because I do think it's important. Like on our summer program, we have the work assigners, those associates who go get the work assignments for the summer associates. And then we have the summer program coordinators, or the ones that plan the social events. And, one year, 2 of the guys were the summer event programmers and the women were the work assigners. I just think it's important, that the instinct, the hiring partner was like, okay, we'll make these 2 women the event planners and the 2 guys. I'm like, no, let's swap that, right? And let's make sure that we're giving everyone the same opportunities to get engaged, and we're not putting people into boxes that we think they fit into.
Yeah, it's that unconscious bias, right? Just coming out. But really quick before we wrap up, I wanted to do something a little bit fun.
Okay.
There are rapid fire questions. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Brene Brown or her podcast, Unlocking Us, but she does this at the end of every interview.
Okay.
She asks just a handful of questions, really quick, don't want you to think about it too hard. Just give me the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
You ready?
Uh-huh.
How do you start your day?
Coffee.
Yes. What is something people often get wrong about you?
I'm quiet. People think I'm quiet.
So they would be surprised to find out that you're not quiet.
That I'm not.
Okay.
I'm a bit of a fighter instinctively. I'm a bit of a fighter. So they think I'm quiet and kind of passive. And I can be quiet because I'm observing, but I'm not always.
They won't know what hit them, huh?
Yeah. It can get ugly.
What's the last show that you binged and loved?
Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, really? So when that show came on, it was like right after I had my second son, and I saw the first episode. I'm like, nope, can't do it. Too many postpartum hormones going on. What's a movie that you will stop and watch every time it's on?
Hitch.
That is a good one.
I enjoy that one. It makes me laugh.
Yes.
It's funny.
It's so good. What's your favorite meal?
Thanksgiving.
All of it? Any particular dishes?
The turkey and stuffing.
Yes.
Now, I will tell you, we do stuffing a little different in the sense that, coming from the Mexican background, rather than gravy, we put chile con queso on our turkey and our stuffing. So
I want to be invited to the next Thanksgiving at your house. What's on your nightstand right now?
The Code Breaker, a book that Nina Cortell, who's another senior partner and somebody I admire very much, we had lunch and she said, you got to read this book. And if Nina tells me I have to do something, I do it. So
how's it going so far?
I have started. We just had lunch a couple of weeks ago, so I'm in chapter 1. So it's slow progress because I'm one of those people who, as soon as I lay down and start reading, I fall asleep.
Yes,
so.
Exactly the same. There's so many books that I've started that are still on my nightstand because I just fall asleep immediately. So final question, give us a snapshot of an ordinary moment in your life that brings you great joy.
I would say when I walk in the door, I have a silver lab, and I walk in the door and he is so happy to see me. And as soon as I walk through the family room, he heads straight to our bar area because there's ice there and he loves ice. And he knows that I usually pour myself a glass of wine and I give him ice. So it's just like I walk in the door, he greets me, I grab my glass of wine, I give him ice, and life is good.
Yeah, that's your evening ritual. That's awesome. Yep. It's so funny with dogs. I feel like if you're gone for 5 minutes or 5 days, they'll react the same way when you walk through that door.
Exactly.
Well, Hilda, thank you so much for spending time with me today and allowing me to ask you some questions and allowing me to better get to know you. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise, Lisa. It was great to speak with you.
Thank you so much.